Big suspension day. So, as you may have seen from the first Mint video, we had major issues with trailing arms cracking. Turns out, maybe shouldn't have been racing on these. The HCR Sportline stuff, great for dooners and budget people, all that. Not so great for hitting trophy truck whoops that are 5 feet deep at 70 miles an hour. So, ended up cracking after we were out suspension testing all day. Anyway, you may have seen Trevor fixed it up. I'll show a clip here. But anyway, Trevor, 44 Motorsports, ended up fixing up the trailing arms and TIG welded them, all that stuff. Unfortunately, they cracked again. Long story short, Chris at HCR came up to me in the tech and contingency line at Mint, basically said, we don't recommend any racer be competing on the Sportline kit, which I don't know if this is true or not. It might be discontinued. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, after the race, I hit up Chris, and he ended up sending me that. It's a full dual sport, top of the line, front and rear suspension kit. Really stoked on that. So first thing, pull the skid plate off, then we can get these arms off, get the fresh stuff in. That's Trevor's fix. It's rusty now because I never coated it in anything. We just welded it on there and it looked beautiful at the time. And then never did anything with it. He did a ton to these things, and unfortunately, right there is a big old fresh crack. So I'm actually gonna repair those and then try to sell them. As far as the fronts, they're a little dirty, but they are in perfect shape still. I mean, there is nothing wrong with these things. There's 3 races on them. They are solid. Definitely recommend these. The only unfortunate thing is that, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of positive camber stock with these things on the front, and that's not ideal. But that said, these arms have been great. They've treated me well, and they're $3,000 cheaper than anything else. So anyway, let's get this going. So first thing I'm gonna do is pull the skid plate, because in order to get the bolts for the lower arms off, you gotta get through the skid plate, unfortunately. So easiest way to do that is just to pull it, and what I did is lifted it up about 1/2 inch, put the pressure on some jack stands, that way I can pull all the bolts out and then lift it up and then just let the skid plate drop. Because I'm by myself, and that's the easiest way to do it. If I had somebody else here, it would take probably 5 minutes, but oh well. Anyway, let's get to the skid plate. So that's the skid plate off. Keep in mind, this skid plate has been on there for 1 race. That's all the crap that was in there. Coffee top, water bottle, lots of rocks, zip ties, all that good stuff. Anyway, okay, skid plate off. Let's pull the front suspension first, then I'll pull the rear. Then we'll get the fresh stuff on. Okay, that's the arms off. I had to pull the diff slightly. It's still attached to the drive shaft. Had to pull the 4 bolts in the bottom, wrestle it out of the way because of the gusset kit. I could have also loosened those 2, and then there's 2 on the top. I've done this before. It's easier just to pull the diff. And I noticed there's a bunch of rocks under there, and yeah, that's not good. I'm gonna hoist the diff up with some ratchet straps, pull all the rocks out of there, clean all that crap out. There's like that under the diff, which is crazy. So anyway, so the next thing is I have to press out these ball joint cups from the old arms because I'm gonna reuse the ball joints. However, I noticed this one from the passenger side is super worn out. It's like, I don't know if you can tell, it's like a football shape. That is supposed to be round. So these are Keller ball joints. I got to replace this. There's also like a little bit of a ding in the shoulder. I don't know what that's from, but anyway, get a new ball joint pin. I'll press these out along with these 3 ball joint cups, and then get those ball joint cups pressed into the new arms, which I'll unbox here shortly. All right, here's the new arms. Let's get them unwrapped. Unboxed, and wow, these things are beautiful. Holy crap. So these are the lowers. They're wider. So it goes like this. You can see it's actually like a triangle shape, which those lowers, the Sport line, they're just a regular box. And yeah, these are all triangular. They're internally gusseted. That's what all these welds are. There's all this plating inside. Yeah, I mean, these things are freaking gorgeous. Wow. All of the known weak points on these arms, like this is a big one where the sway bar comes in. They added this brace on there. There's one on the underside too. It's that brace right there. Just little things like that. There's so much attention to detail on these things. The welds are freaking perfect. Like, look at this, the shock tower tab, like the shock tab. There's an extra plate on here, and then little tiny welds on there. Like, just so freaking strong. So, and okay, here's a comparison. These are the Sport line kit, which you can see they do have some extra braces, all that. But these are boxed, like I said, perfectly square shape, versus these that are like triangular. And then the main plate here kind of overhangs over the edge. That prevents cracks from spreading if a crack ever appears. And how I was talking about weak points, the lower arm where it meets into the frame, right here and over here, that's a known weak point on X3 arms, especially the stock ones. They usually fold right at the joint here. It's a little further down on the stock ones, but like that is about 1.5 inches across. These are about 1 inch on the Sport line, and MIG welded, still internally gusseted, but I mean, you can see there's 3 welds there versus that. So a lot more internal gusseting, a lot more external gusseting. But that said, these are a hell of a lot less money than these. So for what it's worth, this Sportline kit is still way better than stock. I have about 1,500 race miles on these and 0 issues on the front end. I'll get to the back end in a minute, but yeah, no complaints. And I know I said I was going to press the ball joint cups out of the Sportline arms and then press them right into here. I'm still waiting to hear back on the one worn out ball joint. I might be getting a couple fresh ones of those cups that press into the arms. But what I'm going to do instead is paint these arms right now, these front arms, and then I'll probably paint the trailing arms next. But rather than powder coating like I would normally do for suspension arms and that sort of thing, I'm going to use this stuff, Steel It. And if you're not familiar, Steel It is basically, it's this coating. It dries like a powder coat. It's a lot thicker than paint, and it's just really, really, really nice to work with. You can layer it in like you normally couldn't with paint. So say, you know, you want to make a modification, you want to cut a weld, basically do that. That's powder coat. That's Steel It. So if I want to grind this off, I can just layer it back in, and you don't have to fade it like you would with paint, where you're sanding down with like really specific, where you're sanding it down with like really fine sandpaper and blending and all that stuff. And even then it still never works right. This stuff you can just paint right on top and it'll look great. And on that note, the reason I'm doing that over powder coat, one of them, is I don't know if you can see how hammered these are. All that speckling and everything. It's all rusty. That's from, I think, 3 races. And this is powder coat. But with Steel It, I can just touch them up, and yeah, they look brand new again. I can do that between races while they're still on, for a matter of fact. Just hit the bottom of it and blend it right in. But one of the biggest reasons is you can weld right on Steel It. You cannot on powder coat. So right here, when Trevor was fixing these and adding in all these plates here and then there and then down on the inside of the trailing arms, he had to spend a ton of time grinding all of this off and sanding all that off, which, whatever, it's annoying if you have time. But if you rush for time, say middle of a race, and you notice a crack somewhere, which no matter how good your arms are, eventually they'll crack when you're pushing them as hard as we do, you don't want to have to spend a bunch of time gouging out powder coat and clogging up paddle wheels and all that, because you can't even sand freaking powder coat with a paddle wheel. It just like clogs it up. So you got to basically do it with a wire brush or sandblast it, and I don't want to have to do that. So you can weld right on top of Steel It, and it's super nice. All right, so prep these with isopropyl alcohol. I'm gonna give them 2 coats per side, starting with the bottom. Okay, give that about 10 minutes. First coat down, second coat up. All right, that's side 1. I will paint the other side tomorrow. All right, next day. I've painted the underside of the front arms, so those are drying, and a little bit of a change of plans. So I wanted to get the whole front end buttoned up before touching the back end. As I mentioned, the right front ball joint was pretty worn out, the pin here. So Keller is warrantying this for me. Problem is, it's going to take a couple days to get here, so front end's going to stay apart for a little bit, and we're going to jump on the back end. So, as you may have seen in the Mint video, we had to add all of that stuff, which I'll show better when I get the trailing arm off. But also, as I mentioned too, there's a big crack right there on these trailing arms. Other than that, they've been great. I have a lot of miles on them, and have honestly had no issues at all. So, however, they do not have any internal gusseting, which kind of sucks, especially for, you know, how big they are. There's nothing internally. They're just kind of hollow boxes. But again, they are a quarter of the price of just about every other brand, so not complaining. They've been great for everything I've put them through, which is way more than they're designed for. But now to put these bad boys on. These things are the freaking best you could ever imagine. Internal gusseting all over. You can see from these little spot welds everywhere. That's all this internal bracing. Even just like on the sway bar mount, there's extra plating. And unlike a lot of these trailing arms, which the shock normally would bolt up to little plates sticking off of it, that's how the Sportline ones are. The shocks are recessed in here, and so it's an integral part. This side piece, obviously it's one big single piece, and so the shocks bolt down into that, so they're recessed in. What that means is, another cool thing, more ground clearance. So this is the bottom of the arm on the right here, and because the shock is recessed in rather than being mounted out like here, like it would normally be, and like it is on the other arms, that pulls the whole trailing arm up, i.e. more ground clearance between the pivot point and right about there. Versus like on the Sportline arms, for example, that's just a thin tab that the shock bolts to, and that's actually part of what cracked before. And underneath, of course there's cases here, but not a whole lot of ground clearance versus the other ones, which should have a lot more all the way up until the hub. I mean, it's still gonna be about the same right here, but from the pivot point to the hub, there's gonna be a lot more ground clearance on the other ones. So anyway, what I'm gonna do is get the rears pulled off, and then I will steel it, the new ones, paint the new ones, and start to get those on. I gotta press in the OEM trailing arm bushings. I have Precision Motorsports chromoly ones on these arms, but couldn't get them. They don't make them anymore, unfortunately. So, but yeah, let's get this thing pulled apart on the rear. Okay, so I got these trailing arms off. That's the fix we did before. Fix the big cracks. However, this is the main crack I found when it was on the car, but there are a ton of little cracks in other places. So what I'm gonna do now is go through, grind these out, drill the end of the crack, and weld them up. And then I'm gonna try to plate whatever I can. Like this one, for sure, I'm gonna plate. Yeah, we'll go from there. Try to get these ready to keep as spares. But yeah, right where those 3 holes are, there's a bunch of cracks. And then obviously, you know, all that. And then along there's cracks all the way through because they only weld along here and not on both sides for some reason. So what I'm gonna do is fill in this with weld down to about there. Same thing on the other side, obviously, and then put a piece of plate along here and then bend it over to right about there. So anyway, there's a lot of cracks. I don't want to miss anything, and it's really hard to get all the powder coat out of these little crevices, and that's going to make the weld splatter and all that. So anyway, put some paint stripper on about this half of it where all the cracks are. You can see like it's upside down right now, but there's a crack that runs along here, so I drilled it out, ground a little notch in it there, crack there, there's a crack there, a couple in there. Anyway, I got it prepped. What I'm gonna do is fill that one, and then this one in, and that in from the inside, flip it over, and then I'm gonna fill in these pockets with weld along that seam. For some reason it's only welded on that side. And then I'm gonna take a piece of 1-inch and go around this 90 here. So basically just shore up right here, but on the outside. Anyway, I'm gonna get this TIG set up and see if I still know how to weld. It's been a while. Update. Not pretty, but I got these welds fixed up, all the cracks filled in, etc. on the one arm. Next will be to weld these plates in. Basically, here's the other side. I scored it. I'm gonna heat it up and bend it 90 degrees so it'll wrap around this corner, because there was a lot of cracking in here, and then obviously the big crack there that I had to grind out and fill it in from the backside. But yeah, now I'll put the plate over here, and then I got the mirrored one for the other side. So it'll go across here, then I'll fill all that in with weld. So no more weak points on these. And update, plate made. That's what it started as. That's what it's gonna fill. Got that surface prepped, got this bent, wire wheeled, put that there, and weld it up, something like that. And then go in from the underside and fill that hole. So, should be a lot better than it was. These arms should be stronger than they were before all the cracking and all that, obviously. Okay, that's this arm done. Welds aren't the prettiest, but it'll hold. So, next to put this one aside, fix the cracks on that one. There's only a couple. That one, thankfully, is not nearly as bad. Just gotta grind them out, and then I'll do the plate like this one. There's no cracks over here, but just to be safe, I'm gonna add this and make it symmetrical, prep it for paint, and we're good. Okay, so the other arm. I think I found 5 good cracks. So there's one there. There is one good one on that seam. That's a big one. There's another big one along right there. And then there's one this one goes all the way through both sides. And then there's one that kind of propagates through here, right on that weld. It's hard to see, but just right along that seam of the weld. And then there's a tiny, tiny little one right in that corner. So get those ground out. I'm gonna wire wheel a lot of this powder coat off so I can hopefully see any more, and then burn it off, and then get those drilled, grind them out, put that plate here so it doesn't crack here, because for some reason they weld the outside but not the inside. So this is kind of unsupported and there's a lot of stress on this back. So anyway, we get going on these, get these hogged out. All right, so I got this one cleaned up, sorta. Still need to get in there, but kind of can't do it with my tools, so to do it by hand and then just burn the crap out with a torch. I found what I thought was a crack here when there was still a little bit of water in these, and when I blew it out with air, it got a little bit wet right over here. So I don't know if there was like a pinhole in this weld, or it looked like there was a crack here. When I drilled it out, I realized it was just a scratch. So anyway, gonna go over this seam. It's the outside. So gonna go over this, add some material to it. Either way, I'll make it stronger. Yeah, then just fill in some of these cracks everywhere that there's a drill hole. There's a crack. Stuff like that. That was a decent little one. And then, yeah, just fill in most of these. Most of them are pretty small aside from that one. That one and that one were the biggest two. Well, and of course that one. But yeah, now just burn all the crap out, finish cleaning these up, finish making that plate, put that on. Update. Got this plate made, like the other side. So I need to clean it up a little bit, wire wheel it obviously. Clean up the surface, try to get some of the powder coat out of that corner. Basically, I'm just gonna take a torch to it. I can't get in there with a wire wheel any more than I already did. And then we'll weld that up, burn the crap out of those, and get everything else welded up. All right, that's that plate tacked up. Got everything else cleaned up. Get this thing welded on. All right, so that's that plate added. Again, not the prettiest welds in the world by any means. I might actually go over that one again. But yeah, coming together. Just a couple more cracks to fix. And that is the arms welded up. Rather proud of a couple of these. Not the worst weld in the world. Same with a couple of those. Okay, now to press out ball joint cups from the old arms. Update, cup is out. Press didn't work, so use the trusty dusty old heat the bejesus out of it and smack the bejesus out of it. So we shall continue. Ball joint cups pressed in on, I did one upper, one lower. Now we'll do the other two. Okay, all 4 ball joint cups pressed in. Now, trailing arms. Okay, so we got the radial joint pressed in, or the bearing, whatever you call it. There's one of these circlips that has to go in there after it, which was a freaking pain in the butt because there's, as you can see, no little holes to grab it from. So anyway, had to get creative with that. All right, let's get these arms on. Oh my God, screw this gusset kit. I mean, just kidding, because it's like well made and works really well and everything. But holy bejesus, trying to get those lower arm bolts right in the center there through, holy crap. That took a solid like 2.5 days. Well, working from like 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. But anyway, screw those things. So much work to get 2 bolts started. But lower arms are on anyway. Gonna keep continuing with the front. Still waiting on the heim joints and the radial joint on the rear, so as soon as I get those in, then I'll get it pressed in and get the rear back together. That'll be a lot easier. But hoping today and tomorrow I can get the front back together. So I'm gonna be real right now. Every time I have the suspension off this car, I forget how freaking hard it is to get back on. That was a doozy. Getting the lower suspension arms on sucks. The top ones aren't bad at all, other than if you have a big bumper like this, you gotta line that up and then get the bolts through it, like you can see right there. So that was tricky to do. Fortunately, fiance jumped in and helped hold the bumper up while I started the bolts. So anyway, continue. I'm gonna get the ball joints on and the knuckles on and all that stuff. Continue. Then we got brake upgrades. All right, that's ball joints. Not gonna lie, that took me a lot longer than I thought it would, but we'll get the knuckles on with new brake rotors. I'm gonna be real right now. I'm real overworking on this thing. Just kidding. But that said, I'm an idiot. So, originally pressed in the ball joints correctly. Put the arms on, all 4. And somehow ended up putting the lowers on upside down. So, Didn't realize it at the time. I was like, oh crap, I got the ball joints wrong. Flipped them over, pressed them back in. Thought it was all good. Tried to cycle the suspension. Got the knuckle on and all that stuff. And it wouldn't extend all the way. I knew something was wrong. And fiance actually pointed out that the ball joint didn't look right. And anyway, long story short, realized lower arms were on upside down. So anyway, just got those fixed. This is dragging on way too long, but that's the reality with working on stuff. Sometimes, even if you've done it a bunch of times, even if you think you know exactly what you're doing, you're an idiot and you make stupid mistakes. And that's exactly what I did. That cost me many hours of work. Anyway, next I'm going to get those ball joints flipped around and continue. Hoping to get the front end buttoned up tonight, but likely not. So anyway, stay tuned. That's more like it. Okay, so ball joints flipped, everything correct. This side's all together. Now, to do the other side, just got to flip that lower ball joint around and then throw this side back together like that side. Easy peasy. Okay, next day. Time to swap out these with these. It's just an OEM version of the same thing. So got them from UTV Source. I think they were like $50 each or something like that per rotor. These aren't super grooved, but I don't know, they're cooked. We got no brakes on this thing, so gotta do something. And fresh bolts. So anyway, let's get these swapped over. And freshy fresh. That was easy. I heated it up a little bit, but yeah, not bad to do at all. So get the other one done and get this front end back together. All right, that's the front done. Now to get the back. And so we got the trailing arms on, sort of. Next, unfortunately, these lower radius rods came loose, so I don't know the length of them, and those are the most important ones to have at the right length. These are this is the toe adjustment, and then this is like camber. So I need to set these to a very specific length. Unfortunately, to do that, I have to pull the bumper and that plate off. Okay, so a couple of these are came loose, and the heim joints are bad, specifically middle and lower outside heims on the left are bad, and the lower outside heim on the right is bad, and the lower and the mid on the right came loose. So now to figure out what lengths they should be. And this is what I mean by bad heim joints. It should not move like that. So the new ones they sent me, so stiff I can't move them with my hand. All right, next day, and hopefully testing day. Rear suspension is on. I had to grind off a little bit on here for the sway bar link, just because I run one of these shocks on one side. So I had to grind off the top just so there's enough clearance. I also had to sand off a little bit on the leading edge of the trailing arm here, just so the brake line doesn't chafe too bad on it. I added a little bit of extra line too, but yeah, just because that's gonna rub. So didn't want to cut a hole in the brake line. Other issue, my limit straps won't work. Normally they would come, the bolts would come out here. This would come down, hook over the bolt. However, this thickness of the trailing arm is it's a lot thicker than the stock arms, which these limit straps are designed for, so the bolt wasn't long enough. So I just need to get a longer bolt, so no big deal. As for right now, I just put the bolt that the trailing arms came with in. Otherwise, I just need to do a quick alignment on the rear and then on the front. Not that bad to do. All right, so that's it on the suspension swap, race prep. That's a little bit of what I did. Not everything for sure. And a little bit I still need to do. But she's race ready. And threw some fresh BFGs on the back. Alignment. Fresh suspension, threw the jack on there. She is all good to go. We're gonna go test right now. But yeah, stay tuned for the next one. Should be the King of the Castle race, which we're leaving for this week.